Welcome to Alter Health, the epigenetic code. This is where we talk about the science of how your life shapes your genes and how your body can change when you change the conditions around it. Real stories, real science, and real answers. Let's go! Most people, when they hear that we sold everything we owned and moved to Dubai with our 2 daughters, ask the same first question. They ask, why Dubai? And that's the wrong first question. The right one is, why did you leave at all? Because the truth is, we didn't leave because we were chasing something. We left because we had finally seen what we had been doing to ourselves, what the system around us was pulling out of us, and we wanted to start from scratch. And I don't mean everyone suffering from a disease has to leave his country. Of course not. That was our decision. And for us, it was the right one. My husband had started recovering. The blood values were coming down, the tremor was fading, and the cramps were completely gone. We had bought ourselves real time and progress, but we were doing it in spite of our environment, not because of it. We were still in the same house, city, businesses, in the same schedule and loop. The improvements were happening because we were forcing them through sheer effort. And I knew somewhere in my body that effort like that is not sustainable forever. So today I want to tell you about the year we decided to walk away. Not just from a country, more from a version of ourselves that we had outgrown. And I want to tell you what happened when we got to the other side of that decision. This is Alter Health, the medicine nobody told you about. And I'm Dr. Nicola Schmitz. It started with me. These things usually start with one person who says the unspeakable thing first. And the unspeakable thing was, I do not want to do this anymore. I remember the moment I said it. We had been at it for about a year by then. The new sleep, food, supplementation, and the careful tracking. We'd seen real improvement in him. And we had also added all of these new disciplines on top of an already overloaded life. Our businesses were still running. Our daughters still needed us. And the house was still demanding. We were healthier inside our bodies, but our days were not lighter. They were heavier. We were just managing them with better fuel. And one Sunday afternoon in the garden, I said to him, I do not think we can stay here. Not in the country, in this life, in this setup. I don't think we can do this for another 10 or 15 years. I'm not sure we can do it for another 2. He looked at me for a long moment. He didn't argue. He said, tell me what you mean. I said, I mean that what we are doing in our home, in our food routines, that is working. But we are doing it on top of a life that is fundamentally hostile to what we are trying to build. Our business eats our days. The house eats our weekends, and we have no spaciousness. We've no real time together. The kids will be gone soon, and then we'll be sitting here in this big house with our 2 careers and the same exhaustion, just slightly better managed. He was quiet for a while, and then he asked, yeah, but what do you want to do? How do you see our future? And where? I said, what if we sold all of this? I'm not joking. What if we sold the house, our offices, took the girls and started somewhere else, with less, but with more space, and with a different life entirely. It was hard for him to agree, but he knew. I think deep down he knew longer than he admitted. I was right. And from that conversation, the next year of our life began. It was not a sudden decision. It was a slow, methodical decision made over months. We talked about it constantly. We talked about where, why, how, what about the kids, what about our friends, what about the practical reality of selling our businesses, and started over with no income, with no plan, just the inner confidence that we'll find something and that we'll change our life to the better. We made a list of what we actually wanted, not what we thought we should want, what we actually wanted. And that list was small. We wanted to wake up at the same time. We wanted to eat all of our meals together. And we wanted to live somewhere with a climate that supported being outside, walking, moving every day, get a lot of sunlight. And we wanted our daughters to have every possible opportunity to develop exposure to other cultures and the kind of confidence that comes from living somewhere that is not your home country. We wanted, above all, to live a life that didn't exhaust us by Wednesday. I think most of our friends thought we were having some kind of midlife episode. A few of them said it gently, a few said it bluntly. They didn't understand. They couldn't have understood because we hadn't told most of them about the diagnosis. From their point of view, we were two successful professionals throwing away a perfectly good life for a fantasy. Why didn't we tell most of the people? It wasn't because we were ashamed or because it was a secret. It was because neither of us wanted to be pitied. And pity is what comes inevitably when you tell people about a diagnosis like this. People mean well, but their concern, their worry, their questions about how he's doing, their careful looks, all of that would have taken energy we didn't have to spare. We didn't want to be in a victim role. We also didn't want to be heroic fighters. We just wanted to pursue what we believed, that there was a way out of this without distraction, without having to manage other people's emotions about our situation, without being asked every week how things were going. We wanted to face this challenge with our heads up and a lot of self-confidence, and we wanted to go through it together quietly. So yes, we probably upset a lot of people. People who didn't understand why we were pulling back. Maybe they thought we were crazy, selfish, unfriendly. I'm sorry, I really am. But that was the price. And in that moment, our life mattered more to us than their opinion. So we had to accept that. From our point of view, we were two people who had just been given a very specific, very serious warning about how fragile a body can become when you do not change what is breaking it. And we were taking the warning seriously. Now, I'll tell you why Dubai, since I know it is the question, right? It might sound like I'm being paid to promote this place, but I'm not. I'm just honestly grateful. Dubai has given us something we didn't find elsewhere. Not the stereotype version of Dubai that people imagine. We don't live in a downtown tower. We don't live a bling-bling life. We live in a quiet residential area away from the tourist rush, with a garden, many plants, and kind neighbors. When people visit us, they are always surprised. They say, "This is Dubai? I couldn't imagine." Because it's nothing like what the usual stereotypes suggest, the glitz or the desert and nothing else, the assumption that women are restricted. I live very freely here as a woman. The safety is a huge factor, not just internal safety in terms of crime, which is almost non-existent, but as we've seen recently, also external safety. If there's ever unrest in the region, there's probably no place on earth where I feel more protected and cared for than here. The kindness and warmth we receive every day, combined with the fact that so many practical burdens are taken care of, means we can spend our time on the things that actually matter. The values we always had: family, respect, trust, loyalty. Those values are lived here in a way we didn't experience elsewhere. I don't want this to sound like I'm bragging about having a great life here. That's not the point. The point is that we changed our environment to match what our bodies needed. You don't need to move to Dubai to do that. You need to look at your own life and ask, what here is working against me, and what would it take to change it? For us, the answer was Dubai. For you, it might be something completely different. But the principle is the same. Health happens in the right conditions. And sometimes the most important change you can make is the one that gives your body space to recover. We'd been to Dubai a few times before, mostly briefly as tourists. We did one longer scouting trip together before we made the final decision. We walked the neighborhoods, visited schools, we talked to other expat families, sat in cafes, asked ourselves, can we picture us and our daughters here? Can we picture our marriage here and a quieter version of ourselves? The answer in every case was yes. So we went home and started the year of unwinding. Selling the businesses, the house, the accumulated stuff of 2 decades, that all took months. And there's something about packing up a life you have built over 20 years that forces you to confront how much of what you own you do not actually need. We gave away enormous amounts of things: furniture, books, clothes, equipment, entire categories of life that we had been hauling around without thinking. Each thing we let go of was lighter than we expected. By the time we got on the plane, we had 4 suitcases, a dog, and our daughters. That was the family. Everything else was either sold, given, or shipped in a container that would arrive weeks later. I need to be honest about something. The decision to leave wasn't easy for everyone. My husband and our younger daughter struggled with it at the end. While our older daughter and I were ready, we were happy, almost relieved. The other 2 were torn. My husband had built his whole adult life in Bavaria, and our younger daughter was leaving her friends, her school, everything familiar. I could see it in their faces, this quiet grief mixed with uncertainty, a lot of uncertainty. For my husband, it took only a few weeks. One morning he took my hand and said, "I never thought my shoulders could feel this light, without the daily grin. And here's the strange thing. it wasn't like being on vacation. On vacation, there's always this feeling in the background that when the vacation ends, it all starts again. But this time, it hit him. Wait a second. It's not going to start again. I can actually be free for the first time in decades. For our younger daughter, it took longer. Months. She missed her friends, her routine. But eventually, in her own way, she also began to benefit from the change in environment. She found her footing. She grew in ways she wouldn't have grown if we had stayed. But this episode isn't about her story. This is what happened to us, to our health, to our bodies, once we got here. So let me come back to that. The first months were hard, in the way that all real beginnings are hard. We had no friends yet. The girls had to start a new life. The bureaucracy of moving to a new country is its own full-time job for the first 6 weeks. There were 1,000 small things we didn't know how to do, where to buy good food, how the visa system worked, how moving in works, what you do when the air condition breaks at midnight in summer. But underneath all of that practical chaos, something started happening that we hadn't expected. Our bodies started settling, both of us, within weeks. We were sleeping 8 hours every night, real sleep, the kind where you wake up not entirely sure what day it is because your nervous system has actually let go. We were eating all 3 meals together, sitting down, slowly talking. That didn't happen in so many years. We were walking outside every day. The mornings were quiet, the evenings were quiet. There was no series of obligations stacked on top of obligations. And here's what I noticed in him, very specifically. Within about 3 months, his energy was higher than it had been in 15 years. His mood was steadier. He got stronger. He started lifting weights again, which he had not done since his 30s, maybe. He started building muscle, which is, by the way, exactly the opposite of what his disease is supposed to do. And that is the part that still, 7 years on, makes me catch my breath. His disease is a disease of muscle loss. The trajectory the doctors had described to us was a slow, steady weakening of the body, year after year, until eventually he couldn't stand. And what we were watching instead was a body that was building, not just maintaining, building, adding muscle, increasing strength, improving coordination. Now, I want to be careful here. I'm not telling you that we cured a genetic disease. I do not say that, and I do not believe it. The gene is still there. The vulnerability is still there. What I'm telling you is that the gene is, by every measurable indicator we have, no longer expressing in a way that produces disease. The body is no longer receiving the inputs that wake the gene up. The body is receiving inputs that quiet the gene, and as long as those inputs continue, the gene appears to remain quiet. That's not a cure. That's something better. That is a relationship between a person and their body where both sides are paying attention to each other. That is a life where you are not waiting for disease to strike. You are continuously asking, what is my body needing today? And you are giving it. You hold your health in your own hands. Now, for a few minutes, let's look at what our life actually looks like now, because I think it is useful to hear, especially if you are listening to this from inside a life that feels like the one we left. So we wake up at the same time every morning. We have breakfast together. We walk, often in the early hours before the heat. With our 2 dogs now, we have lunch together, we have dinner together. We talk to each other properly every day, not just logistics, real conversations we didn't have for almost a decade because we were too tired to have them. My husband works on his own things now, things he chooses that bring him energy rather than drain him. And he's more himself than he has been since I first met him. The man I see in the kitchen in the mornings, making his coffee, preparing our yogurt, is the man I fell in love with at 17, with a few more lines on his face and a much steadier nervous system. And I built, slowly and almost by accident, the work I do today. The epigenetic coaching, the clients, the retreats, teaching. I started with my husband, with one friend, then a few more, then a steady flow of people who had heard from somewhere that there was someone who looked at the body differently, and the work grew faster than I expected. It still does. And the strange thing is, this work doesn't feel like work to me in the way my practice did. The practice was something I was good at and I made a good living from it, but it was not who I am. This is my calling and this is who I am. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that I feel, for the first time in my adult life, that I'm doing what I'm here to do. There's a quiet rightness to it. I think that is also part of why my own body has changed since we moved. I'm not the same woman as I was in Bavaria. I am calmer, clearer, stronger, and I'm visibly happier. None of this happened because Dubai is magical. We could have done a version of this in many places. The real change was the decision to stop doing what was breaking us and start doing on purpose what was rebuilding us. That decision is available to most of you listening. Not always in the form of a move to another country, as I said. Most people will not and should not do that. But the decision underneath the move is available. The decision to look at your life and ask, what here is currently working against my body and what would it cost me to change that? And is the cost of changing it actually higher than the cost of not changing it? Because most people, I have learned, are paying a much higher price for staying than they would pay for leaving. So that is where we are now. 7 years past the diagnosis, living a life that, by any honest measure, shouldn't have been possible according to the doctors who saw my husband first. He is strong, he's symptom-free, he's building muscle in his 50s on a body that was supposed to be losing it. We're both healthier than we have been in decades. And the work I do, the work that started as a desperate research project for one man, has become something that has helped many other people walk back from places where the system told them there was nothing left to try. Next week is the last episode of this season. I want to tell you why I made this podcast, why now, and why I decided, after years of doing this work quietly with one person at a time, to put my voice out into the world. Why I think this story matters not just for people with rare genetic diseases, but for almost anybody who has been told they are fine when they are not, or that their condition is fixed when it's not, or that they should just learn to live with it. I am going to tell you what I want this show to be, and what I want for you, and what I hope happens if you stay with me through the seasons that come after this one. It is, in a sense, the most important episode, because everything I have told you so far is about why I started looking. The last episode is about why I'm still looking, and why I'm asking you to come with me. If today's episode hit you, if you're sitting in a life that is slowly draining you, and you have been telling yourself there's no way out, please share this with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next Tuesday, because health is a choice.